Hello, welcome everyone. I see people kind of filtering in. We'll lead off with an introduction here. Welcome to the second Faculty Professional Development Lecture of Winter 2023 semester. Today's talk focuses on the artistic practices and studios of Betsy Bauer, Jetshri Bhadviya, and John Rizzo. Thank you all for joining us.
All right, I guess I will kick it
Oh,
off here.
sorry, Betsy.
Oh, I'm
Just
sorry.
before we get started, we have some bios for each of our presenters. I'll go through them quickly now. So first we have Betsy Bauer, an assistant professor in illustration and program lead for visual development. Her bachelor's is from New England College of Art and Design, and she's previously worked at Sony Pictures Animation, DreamWorks Animation TV, Paramount Pictures Feature Animation, and on the Google Doodle. In 2019, she was featured as the Imagine FX Artist in Residence, and she has also taught at Laguna College of Art and Design, and in 2018 illustrated My Little Golden Book about Jackie Robinson, which coincidentally we have at the library. Our next presenter is Jetshri Bhadviya. She has served as an adjunct faculty in Foundation and Art Practice departments. Her bachelor's is from American University in Dubai, and her MFA from Cranbrook. She was the ACAD Teaching Fellow in the CCS Photography Department from 2017 to 2018, and her work has been shown in the Peanut Factory in North Carolina, Detroit Symphony Orchestra Hall, the Grand Rapids Art Museum, the Society for Photographic Education in New Orleans, and more, as well as several venues in Dubai. In 2011, she was named one of the top 10 artists of Dubai by the Sheikh Manal Young Artist Foundation. And lastly, we'll have John Rizzo today. John is the woodshop manager in academic facilities and adjunct faculty in many departments, including foundations, art practice, and color and materials graduate studies. His bachelor's is from CCS and his MFA from Wayne State University. He runs Fourth Wall Concepts LLC, a design, fabrication, and consultation company that has done work for Moose Jaw, Shinola, Depop, and more. And he has worked with and taught a wide variety of organizations, including MOCAD, Hamtramck High School, and Art on the Move. So with that, I will kick it over to Betsy.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here today in such great company. I'm sure everyone will show me up when I'm done here. But yeah, I just wanted to give a bit of a talk about my general schedule, how I organize my time, and then also touch on tools that I use regularly as well. So I had a lovely introduction by Amy, but for those who don't know me, my name is Betsy Bauer. I'm an assistant professor of illustration who focuses on teaching classes within the illustration department that are related to the animation industry. So illustration as applied to the animation industry is often called visual development, which is what my job title has been for most of my career. I've worked as an artist in the entertainment field for over 12 years now, and I've worked with clients like Disney, DreamWorks, Sony, Paramount, Nickelodeon, and Google, just to name a few. So since spring of 2021, I've actually been pulling double duty. So in March of 2021, I had a really exciting freelance opportunity to create some early development artwork for a show, which when I was hired, I was told it's a Disney property that you've heard of. They couldn't tell me anything until after I signed an NDA. So in my mind, I was like, I feel like it must be Marvel or maybe Star Wars, but I'm like, I don't know if they're doing anything Star Wars animated. But as soon as I was sent everything, I realized, oh my gosh, this is Star Wars, which was really exciting for me because I love Star Wars. My husband is a huge Star Wars fan. So I started working on that as a freelancer while teaching at CCS in March of 2021. And I was offered a full-time position on the show in October of 2021 because they liked my work and they had the full funding of the studio. They call it the green light to move forward. So since October of 2021, I've been teaching full-time every semester and working full-time on this show. And keeping that schedule certainly isn't easy. And the comment that I hear most often from everyone is, I don't understand how you can possibly do this. So I'm here to share a little bit of what makes that possible and just techniques and strategies that I've built in and kind of discovered over these past couple of years. And by the way, if you want to watch this show, it will be finally premiering. It takes a long time to make these things, but the first few episodes are premiering on May 4th of this year on Disney Plus. So if you watch those, you should see my name somewhere in the credits. So part one, eat the frog. So I don't know if you've heard this phrase before, but essentially what it means is you want to wake up early and take care of the things that are hardest to do first. So I think everyone has probably had that experience of coming home from work and just feeling exhausted. Even before I was teaching full time, I was waking up at 5 or 6 in the morning before I went into the office to do personal projects or any freelance I might get. I illustrated that Jackie Robinson book while I was full-time at DreamWorks. And for me, I find that after a day of working, I just don't have the energy to tackle anything once I get home. I just want to like eat dinner and sit on the couch. So the solution that I found that works well for me, and I think different people have different things that work for them, but what works for me is waking up early. And in my current life, I'm back and forth between Detroit. My home base is in Los Angeles, California. So right now I wake up at very early in the morning, and most of my classes are in the morning part of the day. So I'm done teaching around, usually with meetings and everything, by 10 a.m. Pacific. So that gives me a fully cleared schedule of my at least time-sensitive teaching-related obligations by the time my studio work starts, which leads me into my next point, which is compartmentalization, aka time blocking. I think that term has become more and more popular. But generally, I try to be done with teaching and meetings by 10 a.m. Pacific. That doesn't always work out, and there's flexibility if need be, but I usually am done by around 10 a.m. If I need to do a little bit of extra work, I'll try to time it around my lunch break at the studio between noon and 1 p.m. And then if there's any loose ends that I need to take care of, which it doesn't happen that often, but every now and then there is something I need to take care of, I try to do it after 7 p.m. But the important thing is I really try very hard to protect my weekends so that I can maintain my own mental health and personal relationships. Part 3 is tools. So this is my current home setup. So you'll see a few different things. And, there's a little bit of weirdness with studios right now. I think some studios are starting to go back into the office. I know with my particular team, we are kind of in the office, kind of not. I was going in once or twice a week for a bit there. And then I think it's just been a little bit crazy. And I think over the next year, studios are trying to go back to a more normal schedule. But I have, in the meantime, invested in a great home setup. So I have my 27-inch iMac, my 22-inch Wacom Cintiq Pro. I have a sit-stand desk, which I think makes a huge difference in just being able to feel like you're not just, stuck in one place all day long. I have a nice supportive office chair. And then I think the thing that I really want to highlight is my iPad Pro. Like, this has truly been a single tool that has changed my life. Before having this tool, I felt so chained to a desk, and every iteration of the iPad seems to get better. But now what I do, and this is truly what has made it possible to do double duty like I have, when I'm in Detroit, I can work on my iPad, get everything I need to do done on there. And then even when I'm in Los Angeles, it makes it easy if I'm working at home that day, or if I'm working in the studio, I have everything just on that iPad. I can sit anywhere. I don't need to have a big crazy setup to do what I need to do. And it's also great where if I have an afternoon that's free of meetings at the studio, I can either go sit in a coffee shop, or maybe even try to catch an early happy hour somewhere. If I don't have anything too intense to do, I can usually sit there and work while I'm spending time with my husband or friends or whoever else I'm with. So it truly has been what has made me feel freed from being trapped at a desk, and again is what has made it possible for me to get as much done as I have over the past couple of years. And then I also just wanted to talk and touch on sustainability of this intensity. So obviously it's an intense schedule. And I want to emphasize that I do all of these things because I love them both. And while I'm sometimes tired, I truly love both of these roles, and I can't imagine giving either one up. And I wouldn't do this for just any studio job either. Star Wars was just such a great opportunity that I truly couldn't say no to getting a chance to be a part of that legacy. But to keep it sustainable, these are things that I really prioritize in my daily life. And the first one is breaks. So if I truly do feel like I'm hitting a wall, I just get up and take a walk or go, get a snack or something. Like I think truly, if I've learned anything, like it's not worth it to keep trying to push. If you're tired, you need breaks, you need to regenerate. You can't make great work if you're not taking care of yourself. Sleep is very important. I really do prioritize 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep each night. And I really, really do actually get that much sleep almost every night. I think people don't believe me since I tend to wake up early, but that just means going to bed before 10, which really is not that bad. Exercise. And again, that's just because your body is your most important tool. So I prioritize all the different things you're supposed to prioritize, like strength training, cardio, lots of stretching, just to make sure that I'm staying in good shape, because when you feel good, your work is good and your output is better. And then of course, proper nutrition. So again, I almost think that being a professional artist, sometimes it's like being a professional athlete, because you just have to take care of your body and make sure that you are feeling good, because again, if you're feeling good, you'll make better work. And of course, just taking time to not only breathe out and create more work, but also taking time to breathe in, meaning finding ways to get more inspiration. So on weekends, I like to, do culturally rich activities like museum visits, gallery openings, architecture tours, and probably my favorite way to recharge is just spending time in nature. Almost every Sunday, I try to go out and hike somewhere. In the summertime, especially, I'm able to do a lot more just because teaching schedules are freed up a bit more. And that's basically how it tends to go. And I thank you for my time, and also would open up any questions if anyone has any questions about anything. Awesome.
Thank you, Betsy. You know what? If there are any questions, we'll also have the questions at the end too.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
All right. Next up is Jetshri.
Sorry about that. Something was going on with my screen. Okay, there we go. So, a huge part of who I am and how I do things or why I do them is because of where I come from and the kind of culture that was ingrained in me in many ways. Having also lived in multiple different places has kind of opened up my mind, and it has made me a better educator and also an artist. So really, like, I come from the religion which is called Jainism, and the only reason I talk about is the one thing I really love about is that they believe in nonviolence, and that I think really roots me because it keeps me calm. It makes me kind of do meditations when I need to manage my time. It just lets me be more open to other people, including students or fellow artists and colleagues, and lets me kind of evaluate what I need to know, learn more, as opposed to just constantly being opinionated. And I think that becomes a huge part of my practice in every way possible. So as a person or as an artist, I work with photography, I work with video and installations that kind of go together. I also do live performances and sound art. I also do commercial work. I need that money on the side to make up for the other practice that I do. So a lot of my work is conceptual, but every now and then I will take on little projects here and there for other fellow artists or other projects that are happening within Detroit. I have also done editorial work and publication work. I kind of curated and edited this entire Bart magazine situation. It was to show people how photography can be really different from artist to artist and how it can be approached and it changes. And So a lot of my work kind of goes into investigating how it can be pushed. And I know I can only represent a certain aspect of the conversation. And so that goes into my curatorial practice, where I can bring in more artists that sometimes are also underseen. So that practice then goes into curating, where I sometimes have been bringing in students actually who've been making work that's important. This particular project was about a manifest of cities, where I was bringing in people from different cultural personalities, having conversations around what it means to be that gender and person in that culture that they're coming from. And so it was an interesting, exhibition, which happened at 333 Midland. I was also a huge part of the Mighty Real Queer Detroit exhibition that happened this past year, and curated a couple of locations, which was at Detroit Artist Market and at CCS, and also the film night that they had, which takes me to having, in the last 2 years, joined the boards and commissions of Mighty Real Queer Detroit. I also help run, along with other people at CCS, the DEI exhibitions at CCS, which is a platform we've been opening up since COVID for students to be able to showcase work that's around, where they can open up and have conversations of what they want to, in basically uncensored way, right? And I recently also joined the Hamtramck's Art and Culture Commission in an attempt to basically be able to give more opportunities to underseen artists that are making work around feeling like the other, or feeling like an immigrant, or being left out from the conversation because of being different due to the gender and background and race and whatnot. Also, as an educator, I tend to bring that into the conversation. I make sure that when I am talking with the students, right, a huge frustration for me in general with everything has been, can they talk about what they want? Why is it always about just assignments and like learning? Can they learn the techniques, but also adapt what they really want to talk about and have that sort of freedom to do so? So I try my best in classes that I do have, because some foundation courses cannot fully change, but the other courses that I have taught, where I do have the freedom to do that, I tend to make the assignments more open oriented, so students can connect and talk about what they want to, and almost, the works that come off of this become like portfolio pieces, no matter what medium they tend to use. Like this particular student shared, this work, which was like a self-portrait of having OCD and what that means. And this is just like this constant loop, going on. And so I think like being able to give that platform to students and myself in various different ways to manage, that is what drives me, and that's why I can do a whole lot as opposed to one or the other thing. So for me, it's not so much about time management as it is about doing things I'm passionate about, because when that happens, you forget that you have so much to do. It's more about, I love it, I'm doing it, and I'm going to keep doing it to create a change in any way possible. So yeah, I don't know how much time is left, but yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Jetshri. Next up, we have John.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to screen share. I guess I'm going to talk a little bit just about, I guess, kind of what I do. What I do is maybe a little bit different than the other two people that we're talking with, which is, I think, what hopefully will make this an interesting conversation. So I'm going to kind of just scroll through images, and I won't talk real specifically about it, but like my work is very much like in the physical world, all of these things. I work dimensionally, I work physically. whether it's in furniture, whether it's in sculpture, or whether it's potentially job work. But all of these things require like the space, and they require like the time and the work of hand. And like, so these are things that to me, I very much value. I'm not great at separating my personal life and my work life because they do all kind of just interweave together. And like where one starts and where one ends isn't always like this definitive clock in, clock out. And so it can be a real challenge for me to create like a balance in things because I'm interested in a lot of things, and therefore like my curiosity tends to drive what it is that I'm doing and what it is that I'm sort of exploring. And that energizes me to like keep going all the time. It is a lot of long hours. It is like a lot of learning, like it is taking workshops. It's going outside of like what I do in my daily life to like see what else is happening in the world as well. So like traveling is really important. Working with other people is really important, learning from other people. And so part of that really goes into my philosophy of teaching as well, where like I don't feel that you can learn everything in the finite amount of time in the classroom, and you have to kind of move beyond that. And sometimes you give a little bit more of yourself, and that's part of like the compromise and the sacrifice you make, but you're making it because you're enjoying the process. And so part of it is like doing something you love and you're passionate about, and that passion tends to like come through as you're creating this life. I mean, yes, there are things that I enjoy outside of just what I make and what I do in the studio. Sometimes there's not enough hours in the day for those things, but yes, having some sort of a regimen and getting up every day, even when you're tired, and pushing yourself beyond like the boundaries or the finite knowledge that you've acquired is like the ongoing goal. Like it is, I always say to younger students, like being a creative person is a lifestyle. It's not necessarily like a job, because it doesn't end. It's not like you stop thinking about it when you're going to bed, or like you tune it out and you no longer like you punch the clock and you don't think about it again. And so my practice ranges kind of all over the place as a result of that. And then there is like the more commercial aspects of the company where, you know, the output of the work is more client dictated than necessarily like always my own creative endeavor. And like, so part of that is, you know, you're doing this to make other people happy too. It's not just like a self-indulgent, this is what I want to do, when I want to do it, and how I want to do it, and that's all I'm going to do. Like you kind of go to wherever things need to happen.
Hey, John,
yeah,
not to interrupt, but is your screen moving forward on your end?
It is. Is it not on yours?
I think it might be frozen on our end, and we have people in the chat who are eager to see your wonderful work.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know why it would not be going.
I think when you shared your screen, and if you shared it for PowerPoint, then it won't do when you go to the slideshow. You might want to just share the entire screen.
Okay, let me try that again then. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. So just go to screen, you said?
Correct.
Okay. Let me
Perfect.
see.
Yes.
Let me see. Boy, I wish you would have told me earlier, because I'm like just chugging through images here. Let's just go back through here. Sorry about that. I'll just kind of fast forward as we go here, so I don't want to take up too much time. But, you know, a lot of this, I guess, in terms of like your personal life balance, your studio, one of the challenges of being like a sculptor and working dimensionally is like you need space, and like how do you negotiate that space, and like what do you do with all this stuff? And so eventually like you either need more space or you run out of space, or you have to like figure out how to move work that you kind of have moved past mentally. And so then there's that whole other avenue of the practice where like you're constantly looking for outlets for work. I mean, in an ideal world, like sure, everyone comes to you for it, but how do you reach your audience? And these days there's a lot more avenues in which to do that than there was previously. So hopefully these are moving now and people can see, okay. So yeah, I mean, you kind of take every opportunity you can get, and like where those opportunities fall, like you don't know. So I'm a big proponent and advocate of like, you try things that maybe are outside of your wheelhouse and you build your skills in doing that. You know, whatever the avenue of like your work is or your desired work, you know, you're sort of like doing things that maybe aren't like the format of what you consider your personal practice. And hopefully there's some sort of monetary goal in that. So I'll stop my long diatribe there. I wish those things would have been more synchronized, but
thank you so much, John. That was really great. And I'm really glad we got to see your images, your work. Thank you to all of our presenters. I'd like to open up the floor for questions for our wonderful guests. Yeah, Nadine.
I thank you so much to all three of you. I worked with you guys for years, and it was great to see your personal work and what you're doing. Can you speak a little bit to any particular successes or failures that you've experienced in your artistic career and what you've learned from those experiences? Just, you know, generally, any hits or misses that you want to share with us?
I'll speak a little bit about my experience with that. Of course, there's always failure. And like, if you're not failing, you're not really expanding beyond what you already know. I mean, one of the most formative moments I had was when I was just out of undergrad and like, I got a really negative review from like a critic. And at first I was like devastated, but part of like being in school that had prepared me for that was like, you're never going to please everyone. You're never going to please everyone. Like you hope to like please the majority, but there's always going to be someone who doesn't enjoy what you're doing, and to like not let that be like a stumbling point that stops you from moving forward is a really important thing.
Also, if I can add to that, you know, me personally, and I don't share a lot of this, which I probably should, I started out with failures through my education to beyond. You know, from being back home in India and having dyslexia to, you know, it not being taken well when I was in the, you know, at least around the time I was still growing up, it was not great. And it resulted into my school trying to take away anything and everything I wanted to take as my courses, because they thought I would just leave school in general out of frustration. So I wasn't allowed to take art, weirdly enough, and I'm an artist today. And even like when I was and constantly I feel like when I make my artworks too, at a certain level, those works do fail from the amount of things I'm thinking, because it's not just one idea, it's multiple ideas. So I keep making new work. Conceptually speaking too, because I work in so many different mediums, I fail oftentimes when I work with something new in trying to create that work. So all of that is a process that just makes me better. I think just one of those things that I feel I'm better for it. Thank you.
And I'll just speak to my own situation too. I mean, I think any artist who has been working for a decade or more who tells you that they haven't had downs is lying. There's no possible way, I think, to pursue a creative path without having many ups and downs. And just speaking to working in entertainment. So, I mean, I think I've it's a particularly crazy kind of an industry where tides shift and change. And I've had times where I'm on a project that I love with a great team and I feel really good. And even on the same project, there are times when I've gotten an assignment and I'm trying something that I'm not familiar with. For example, if I was given I'm trying to think of a specific example over the years, but if I was given like a vehicle to design or something, I'll often say yes to things, even if I don't think I know how to do it, just because I think it's an opportunity to learn, and B, I want to be a team player and help support the needs of what's going on at the studio at that time. But there definitely have been times when I've been given an assignment and I've said, yes, I want to do this. And then, I haven't quite hit the mark of what they're looking for. And then it ends up getting reassigned to someone else. And that's always painful when it happens. But I think, again, over time, I've learned that that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not qualified to be there. It just means that my strengths lie somewhere other than, my teammate who maybe is a fantastic vehicle designer. So I think with all failure, you sort of learn your strengths along with the things that you're not as good at. So, yeah.
I see two hands, Amy and then Jetshri.
Oh, I just want to make sure, Jetshri, if you had something to add on that question.
Very quick thing I want to tell people is like, don't be afraid to ask for help. That's really important. I'm pretty sure everyone around us knows things better in a specific context. We all have our plus and minuses. And I've learned that asking people something that you don't know is always perfect.
Yeah, and I'll call out Nadine's comment because it was quite nice. Nadine mentioned in the chat, so great to hear you all seem so accomplished. So it's nice to hear that there was a point where it wasn't always great. Thanks for sharing and continuing to work through any challenges. So my question, I was wondering if all of you could speak to, how your personal art practice informs your work or your classes and vice versa, what that process looks like.
I'm happy to start on that. So I know I didn't share a lot of actual visual work today. Some of that is because there's something called non-disclosure agreements, which often makes it hard to share the literal work that you're doing until after the project has been released. So in May, and probably through next year, I'll be able to share the work that I've done with my classes. And I think the way that I've run a lot of the visual development curriculum is drawing directly from things that I see in the studio on a day-to-day basis. And even since I started working, which was, I think my first internship was summer of 2010 at Sony Pictures Animation. And I often tell my students that when I started, there was still a closet full of pencils and paper. And while I was there, I went and rated it. I took a whole bunch of really nice pencils and sketchbooks, and those do not exist in studios anymore. Everything is digital. And some will, complain that it's a loss of something, but I think things have always changed and they change fast. And anything that is sort of adjacent to technology, which I would argue that the entertainment industry is, because of all of the visual effects, and animation is essentially an entire field of visual effects. So that said, I think as things change, I think being on the ground really makes a huge difference in the type of information and practices I'm able to share with my students. And beyond that, I think it's always really helpful for them to see how the assignments that they're getting would apply within an actual real studio. And I can share examples of work that I have done. I can share anecdotes of the way that things have gone. And I think that just helps ground what they're doing in a lot more reality than just getting a random assignment.
My practice is very much, I guess, interwoven into the subjects I teach. I do a lot of analog work. It's the place I prefer to live. you know, some things you can work digitally. Like, I mean, there is great tools within the digital field for like physical output. But there is like a nuance and romance to things that are actually still like done by hand. It's not to like say one is more valuable than the other, but I think like we have preferences, and we all have these sort of like things that we're inherently drawn to, or things that we're inherently curious about. And so to sort of like share those skills, regardless of what they may be, with students is like what we're all here for on some level, is to like prepare them to have like the life that they want to have beyond here. And that just requires like that dedication to them at the same time, to help like bring them into themselves, and also to develop like the skills that they have further, and the skills that they want to sort of garner from us.
Yeah, and you know, oftentimes in the classes that allow me to do so, you know, mostly those junior classes that I've ever taught, in general, or sophomore classes, let me have a little bit more freedom as opposed to the freshman classes, just because, you know, freshman classes are too similar. They have to run exactly the same way. So the opportunity there isn't as much as opposed to in other classrooms. And what I tend to do with students is at least have that one assignment where like, you know, appealing to them what they care about, and explaining to them how you know, art and activism and advocacy are very similar, in the sense that if you have even a little bit of compassion towards a conversation, right, it leads to you wanting to do work that you care about. And so changing the concept of activism as not being something that you go out on the streets or you have to like take a stance, it's more about having compassion towards an idea. And what is that idea that you want to really have conversations around? Is it personal, or is it more overall in the world? You know, and being able to make work towards that, be it in the form of photography or video or sound or performance. And so it does let students kind of think about making a work that they can take forward without it being as a part of a classroom. It becomes a part of the portfolio piece in some ways. It's something they care about enough to make that work and feel passion, as opposed to just feeling like, oh, it's another assignment, right? And that becomes a little bit hard sometimes, right? Some students are not, it's not easy to get them to have such an open-ended conversation. What can I make the work about? And being able to help them find that voice that they've always wanted to have is something that's really important. And I try my best, be it talking about race or surviving something or mental health issue. And at that point, all of that opens up into a conversation.
I have a question for y'all. How do you decide which projects to work on next or to take on? Or maybe alternatively, how do you develop creative new ideas and fit that into your work balance? And I also saw Gil's hand too, so he's got a question.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll answer that choosing projects. So I think in animation, choice is usually a luxury. I've been lucky to have to make choices several times over the years. And for me, when I'm choosing a project, I always try to sit back and look at who I'd be working with. That's more important to me, almost more so than anything else. You know, if it's a great team of people, if it's a great director who's working on it, those things, even if the project maybe doesn't pay as well, are going to carry you further than, you know, choosing something just because on paper it looks like it's the most money. So I can speak to a specific example of that. When I was going on to my project at DreamWorks years ago, I was also offered a similar role at Warner Brothers Animation. And, I was obviously very lucky to have two great options to choose between. But as I was looking at the offers, the DreamWorks offer was significantly less money over the course of the year. But I thought that the project seemed more exciting than I would have worked on at Warner Brothers. And it was an opportunity to work with a director who I really admire, Guillermo del Toro, who just won an Oscar, which is crazy. So I chose that project because I just was thinking, not just in this short term of, okay, well, like I would be able to save XYZ amount more. I was thinking about this is going to help propel me further so that maybe down the road, if I do have the opportunity to make more money, it'll be more available to me then. So definitely taking long-term thinking is a big part of it for me.
Also, like, I can talk towards it. Thank you, Betsy. I think that was really great. I wanted to talk about my Mighty Real Queer Detroit project that I started working on last year. And I came towards the project because I was curating for Detroit Artist Market, that particular mini exhibition, because it became a really big event. There were about 140 artists showcased and about 14 galleries that kind of participated within Detroit. So I was only curating one of the galleries at first because I was working in the exhibition committee at Detroit Artist Market. However, when I joined the meeting with MRQD, Mighty Real Queer Detroit, I just felt like I really wanted to help the artists that were being seen. A lot of them had never shown before out of being scared. A lot of them were just coming out through that exhibition. A lot of them were just starting to be seen, and some were known already, of course. But I just really wanted to support the idea of that exhibition and the people that have usually been underrepresented. So my reason for taking that on was solely on that at the time. Hey, I don't have the money, but how can I help this organization, right? Okay, we can do Kickstarters, we can get some money in, we can talk to people we know around, and see if they would be willing to chip in a little bit to contribute a little bit. And all of that led to, in the end, me officially being hired to be the web designer, me curating a couple of more exhibitions. It just became a much bigger role, which of course eventually also became paid, even though I didn't go in with that mindset into it. So oftentimes I'll take projects I care about to support local communities, even if that means it might not always come with pay or because it's a big name, but it's just a different thing that it was fruitful, and yeah, it became big, but I just love being able to do that for people if I can.
I'm just a firm believer in, like, you take every opportunity that you can fit into your schedule, because you never quite know what opportunity it's going to lead to. If you don't take those opportunities, you definitely know it's not going to go anywhere. It's just more of like, how do you create that ratio of balance to fit it all in? I'm also very much in like the philosophy and mindset of like, to not have an elitist mentality, to feel like you're above showing somewhere or working for someone or doing something that maybe some would see as being somewhat lesser. Like those things can be more valuable than the high paying projects. They can form more fruitful relationships that you never quite know where those sort of like connections are going to end up like interweaving later on. And that's like one of the beautiful things about like this sort of river of life, is you don't really know when things are going to like come back together and cross back over. And so like to just build bridges instead of tearing them down. And I think that's very much sort of what Jetshri was saying in regards to like, do projects you care about. And sometimes you do ones that maybe you're less interested in, but you like the people. Like Betsy was saying, it's like, so, just take the opportunities and don't be afraid to like shy away from them. And even if you don't feel prepared for it, like you're never going to be prepared if you stay in that constant state of fear or unpreparedness. And sometimes it forces you to like get it together to be prepared. So.
Okay, I just want to make a last call for any more questions before we wrap up a few minutes early. Okay, so with that, thank you all for attending today's lecture. We will be picking up a new series of lectures in the fall, but in the meantime, we are going to be sharing out the recording of today's lecture in the coming weeks. So in closing, I just want to thank our presenters, John, Betsy, and Jetshri. I think we got a really nice mix of, getting behind the curtain a little bit and talking about, kind of the combination of logistics and passion and professional development and learning that you all have kind of swirled together to mix your personal practice with your work. So appreciate the conversation today and hope you all have a great weekend.